I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. So my fiancé, female, 24 years old, and I, male, 27 years old, got engaged in May and are currently planning for our wedding in August. It's worth mentioning that I'm the sole earner because my fiancé is still in university. I've saved up decent amount of money to afford the wedding. Thing is, her parents get involved in everything, from picking the engagement ring on my behalf, to giving opinions on where we should rent, and now my FMIL is constantly giving opinions on our wedding. FMIL would follow up on everything we do and make negative comments on things like the best man, the guest list, and food. She told my fiancé she didn't like who I picked to be my best man and wanted me replace him after a big argument, but I said no, though my fiancé said we should have just done it. Mother-in-law also wanted me to uninvite people I wanted at the wedding so she could add more guests on her side of family. I said no to that also. Now the current or biggest conflict between us. Mother-in-law called saying she didn't like the venue we picked, which is in our hometown. She wanted me to reconsider, but I said no since my fiancé liked it too. But my fiancé came to me yesterday to show me a venue her mom picked and already paid for, saying, since she paid for it then I should say yes, this time. I was in shock and angry because not only did she not consult us, but the venue she picked is 3 towns away where my brother-in-law lives. I immediately thought about my disabled parents who cannot travel this distance for health reasons. Besides that, most of my family won't attend because of distance. I said absolutely not, agreeing on this venue. My fiancé said she disagreed with me and I had no right to complain because her mom and dad paid a lot of money for this venue as wedding gift and we should accept it. I calmly explained why I refused and she kept saying I'm refusing on purpose because I hate her mom and am playing cat and mouse with her. I bluntly said her mom is indeed making this a game and told my fiancé she's either with me or against on this issue. She either backs me up or there won't be any more wedding planning. She got upset and started crying, asking what she's going to tell her mom and why I was making her choose between me and her parents, but I just feel like she's refusing to see why I don't want this specific venue. So what if her brother lives there? I have never been to that town, so having the wedding just cause her mom paid for the venue is not okay. We haven't talked ever since that argument. My friend called me ungrateful fool for turning away a free wedding venue over distance, but I can't help but feel FMIL did it purposely. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now, as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes, his parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I am expecting my first daughter with my husband in September. I grew up in a moderately religious household with pretty strictly defined gender roles. As in, since I was a girl, I had chores around the house while my younger brother did not have to do anything. I don't talk to my parents for a variety of reasons, going on year 5 now, so they do not know I am pregnant. Both my aunts and grandparents were very supportive of me leaving my household and as such have been my main family. Being 6 months pregnant now, people have started to give gifts and I am very grateful for them. We have decided that we don't want our daughter to be surrounded by pink everything with only girl things. So we have made a conscious effort to include traditionally boy outfits and toys like dinosaurs and cars. We have told people that any gender items would be accepted, and if it's getting too much pink, we have gone out to balance a bit. Getting a green jacket or something. My younger aunt has taken great offense to this because boys are boys and girls are girls. And she is a very verbal and loud person and has let us know several times her opinions. She has 2 boys. At my baby shower, my older aunt gifted us a book called Goodnight Construction Site and a little stuffed truck. My younger aunt went on a tirade about how we are somehow making our daughter trans and not allowing her to be a girl. And she's a loud person, so of course her saying this was more like a yell. And in front of my very liberal in-laws who are very supportive of our choice. Pregnancy hormones took over and I grabbed the toy, gave it to my younger aunt and asked her what part of the penis was needed to operate this toy truck. She yelled that's not what she meant and left. The rest of the baby shower went fine, but it was a bit awkward after. Since then she has been blowing up Facebook where a bunch of people agree with her that I am making my daughter trans, and have been telling me that I was an asshole. The rest of my think what we are doing is fine, but that I shouldn't have handled it that way. I do not care if she ends up loving pink and unicorns etc., we will get her them then. I just was trying to balance out the sheer amount of pink items we were getting from friends and family. Almost every single gift has been heavily pink or girl influenced. To the point where she would not be dressed in anything but pink if we did not go out and buy some more boy things. I also am generally not a person who argues. But I feel like a bit of an unholy because I intentionally said this as deadpan serious as I could and with the intent to embarrass her in front of our family members present. My delivery and question did have the intended effect and she went quite red before leaving. This was also the first transphobic comment I've ever heard out of her mouth. While we all grew up quite conservative, my older aunt coming out 27 years ago really changed my family's perspective. My grandparents have changed from what they previously viewed, and my aunt was always supportive of my other aunt. My younger aunt always wanted a girl. So I thought she was just trying to act out her fantasy girl with all her gifts and preferences.